What if the night we now dress in masks and laughter was once the most feared night of the year? Before candy, before costumes, before pumpkins carved into grinning faces, there was only firelight flickering in the cold and the terror of shadows moving just beyond its reach. The Celts called it Samhain the night, when the walls between the living and the dead collapsed. When every knock at the door could be a neighbor, or something far older, something hungering. Imagine the air sharp with smoke, the cries of animals slaughtered in sacrifice, the trembling of villagers as they painted their faces not for play, but for disguise, hiding themselves from the spirits roaming free. Black cats crouched at thresholds seen as guardians and omens, witches whispered in circles of flame, bargaining with forces unseen. And drifting between worlds was Stingy Jack, cursed to wander forever with his hollow lantern, a faint glow marking damnation without end. Across oceans and centuries, these shadows bled into new forms. The Headless Horseman thundering through Sleepy Hollow, a ghostly reaper galloping under autumn moons. The names changed, the costumes grew brighter, yet the ritual remained. Halloween was not born of joy, but of survival and night, to outwit death, to appease the dead. To remember that fear was once the only protection against what walked unseen. So the question lingers, hidden beneath every mask. When we celebrate Halloween, are we truly playing with shadows or inviting them back into the world? To uncover the true origins of Halloween, we must travel back more than 2,000 years to the mist-covered hills of Ireland and Scotland, where the ancient Celts marked the turning of the year with Samhain. Unlike modern calendars, their year ended not in winter's depths, but at the harvest's close. When the final crops were gathered and the days grew short, Samhain was not only the dying of the year, it was the night when boundaries thinned. When the veil between the living and the dead dissolved, the Celts believed that during Samhain, spirits wandered freely. Ancestors returned to their homes, welcomed with offerings of food and drink, while darker entities slipped through the cracks, seeking warmth, revenge, or souls to claim. To protect themselves, villagers extinguished the fires in their homes, plunging their hearths into darkness, and gathered around communal bonfires lit with sacred flame. There they offered sacrifices, grain, animals, sometimes even whispers of human life, to appease gods and spirits alike. Embers from the great fire were carried back to relight each household, a ritual symbolizing survival and divine protection. Masks and disguises, so central to modern Halloween, were born from fear, not festivity. Villagers painted their faces with ash, draped themselves in animal hides, and wandered the night hoping to blend with wandering spirits. To be mistaken for one of the dead was safety. To be recognized as living was to risk being dragged into the other world. Even the early tradition of leaving food at the door, what we now know as trick-or-treat, was meant as offerings to placate restless souls, ensuring they passed by without harm. As centuries passed, Rome absorbed Celtic lands, and with it, their rituals. Roman festivals of the dead, such as Feralia, mingled with Samhain. The worship of Pomona, goddess of fruit and orchards, introduced the symbolism of apples, weaving fertility and divination into the fabric of the feast. Young women bobbed for apples, not for sport, but to glimpse their future husbands, trusting the fruit to carry hidden truths. Then came Christianity, reshaping old rituals into new doctrine. By the 9th century, the Church established All Saints' Day, All Hallows On, November 1st, sanctifying a time to honor holy dead. The night before became All Hallows' Eve, a Christian veil cast over older fears. Now yet, rather than erase Samhain, the Church transformed it. Bonfires still blazed, but now as hallow fires. Masks persisted but were rebranded as mockery of demons. Spirits still roamed, only now named as devils, witches, and damned souls. The language shifted, but the dread remained. All Hallows' Eve spread across Europe, each culture layering its own shades of fear. In England, soul cakes were given to beggars in exchange for prayers for the dead, at practice that echoes in the candies passed door to door today. In Germany, lanterns were carved from beets and turnips, lit with embers to ward off wandering souls, ancestors of the jack-o'-lantern. And in Ireland, tales of Stingy Jack, a drunkard who tricked both God and the devil, condemned to wander with only a carved turnip lantern, became a central tale of the night. When Irish immigrants carried these traditions to America in the 19th century, The pumpkin became the perfect vessel larger, brighter, easier to carve. The Jacko. Lantern grins that now decorate porches are faint echoes of those desperate charms meant to ward off damnation. Tricourt treating emerged from a fusion of Samhain in England and Guising in Scotland, blending charity, disguise, and appeasement into a ritual of exchange between worlds. Even the Headless Horseman of Sleepy Hollow, so entwined with Halloween lore, reflects this merging. Washington Irving drew on European tales of the wild hunt, of spectral riders and restless soldiers, weaving them into American soil. In the Horseman's Gallop, we hear the same dread as Samhain. The living cannot escape the pursuit of the dead. Thus, Halloween's background is not a tale of innocent celebration. It is a palimpsest, layer upon layer of fear, ritual, and survival. From Celtic priests whispering incantations around sacred bonfires, to medieval peasants praying for souls in exchange for cakes, to immigrants carving faces into lanterns, each generation reshaped the ritual, but never escaped its essence. Halloween was always about death welcoming it, fearing it, bargaining with it. What we now see as playful masks, sweet confections, and glowing pumpkins were once survival strategies. Behind every flickering candle is the memory of fire meant to hold back darkness. Behind every mask is the echo of a villager disguising themselves from spirits. Behind every knock at the door is the ancient question: is it a neighbor or something returned from the other side? When we peel back the layers of Halloween, what emerges is not candy and costumes, but a dark pantheon of symbols, each with roots far older than we imagine, each carrying echoes of fear, ritual, and forbidden memory. Witches, black cats, ghosts, jack-o'-lanterns, and headless riders were not inventions of modern lore. They were fragments of survival, archetypes born of shadow. The witch is the most enduring. To the Celts, the night of Samhain belonged to those who could cross thresholds: priests, shamans, and seers who spoke with spirits when the veil grew thin. Later, as Christianity took root, these figures were recast as witches, women consorting with the devil, gathering in secret covens beneath the autumn moon. On All Hallows' Eve, people whispered that witches rode across the sky on broomsticks, not for mischief, but for ritual, carrying herbs and charms to protect themselves or curse their enemies. Their image became bound to Halloween because they embodied the fear of knowledge that defied the church, the fear that someone might command the night instead of fearing it. Beside them crouched the black cat. In Celtic belief, cats were liminal creatures, guardians of thresholds, able to slip between worlds. Some were believed to be witches' familiars, demonic allies with glowing eyes that pierced the veil of death. To encounter a black cat on Halloween was not mere superstition, but a reminder that the other world was watching. In Scotland, the cat, a spectral black feline, was said to steal souls before burial. To ward it off, villagers left offerings of milk on their doorsteps during Samhain. Thus the black cat, feared and revered, became forever linked to the season of the dead. Ghosts, of course, are the most obvious. Halloween is the night of return, when the dead wander seeking warmth in the homes they once knew. In the oldest tales, families would set places at the table for ancestors, welcoming them with food and drink. But not all spirits were gentle. The restless dead, those denied burial or justice, roamed with bitterness. They knocked at doors demanding offerings, their presence the root of trichord. To disguise oneself as a ghost was to hide among them, to say, "I am one of you, pass me by." Every white sheet costume, every painted skull mask is an echo of this primal fear, that the dead are never as far away as we hope. Among these shadows walked Stingy Jack, the trickster of Irish lore. Jack was a drunkard and a deceiver who tricked the devil more than once. But when he died, neither heaven nor hell would take him. Condemned to wander the night, he carried only a carved turnip lit with a coal from hellfire, a lantern to light his endless exile. Irish immigrants carried this tale to America, where pumpkins replaced turnips, larger and brighter, and the jack-o'-lantern was born. The smiling face we carve today hides a story of damnation, a soul forever denied rest, glowing faintly in the dark. Each flickering candle in a hollowed pumpkin is a ritual of warding, is meant to mimic Jack's curse, to frighten away wandering spirits, or perhaps lure them in. Finally, across the Atlantic, another figure joined the Halloween host, the Headless Horseman of Sleepy Hollow. Washington Irving's tale was rooted in European legends of spectral riders, soldiers slain in war who returned without heads, hunting the living. In Celtic lore, there was the Dullahan, a decapitated rider carrying his own head, whose appearance meant death. Irving's American horseman, galloping beneath autumn branches, carried the same dread. The idea that war and death do not stay buried, that the dead ride still, demanding recognition. His story fused with Halloween because it carried the same essence, death breaking through the veil, chasing the living beneath harvest moons. Together, these figures form the dark constellation of Halloween, the witch, embodying forbidden power, the black cat, the liminal guardian, the ghost, the restless dead, Stingy Jack, the eternal exile, the Headless Horseman, the revenant hunter. None of them were invented for fun. Each was a fragment of fear, an attempt to understand or survive the night when boundaries dissolved. What ties them together is the ritual of disguise and recognition. To name them, to tell their stories, to carve their faces into lanterns or paint them into masks, was to give form to the formless. Fear without form consumes. Fear with a mask can be bargained with. That is the secret at the heart of Halloween. We shape the shadows so they will not shape us. Yet beneath every witch's cackle, every cat's hiss, every lantern's grin, the old terror lingers. These symbols were not toys but talismans, crafted to protect against death's return. Even now, when children knock at doors with laughter instead of dread, the ritual echoes. A mask still hides the living from the dead. A lantern still glows against the night. And every story told on Halloween is a reminder that the boundary between us and them is thin, fragile, and waiting to be crossed. The night of Samhain did not arrive suddenly. It crept in with the dying sun, when the harvest fields lay empty, and the winds carried the brittle scent of withered stalks. Villagers huddled inside their homes, their hearths extinguished, leaving the air thick with darkness. Only the great communal bonfire burned on the hill, its smoke coiling upward like a bridge between earth and sky. The people gathered around it not with joy but with trembling, for this was not celebration, it was defense. The priests moved in circles around the flames, chanting words older than the soil itself, sprinkling blood from the seasons, slaughtered animals into the fire. Sparks leapt, twisting into shapes that seemed almost human, almost spectral. The crowd whispered, believing the smoke carried their offerings to unseen beings. It was the one night of the year when they did not pretend to be alone in the world. They knew the dead were walking. In the village below, doors rattled, though no wind blew. At the threshold of one home, a faint knock echoed, soft at first, then louder, insistent. A family huddled within, faces painted with ash, children hidden beneath animal hides. They dared not open, for the voice outside was strange, familiar, yet hollow. "Let me in," it pleaded. "The night is cold." It could be a lost neighbor, or the shade of someone buried long ago. The food left on the doorstep, a loaf of bread, a bowl of milk, was an offering, a bargain. "Take this and pass us by." Black cats prowled the edges of the village, their eyes glowing in the dark. One leapt onto a roof, and the family inside held their breath, for they believed the cat had come to claim a soul. Only when a dish of cream was left at the door did the sound of claws retreat. Even in silence, the people knew they were not alone. Beyond the fields, the road glowed faintly with an eerie light. A lone figure wandered, Stingy Jack, cursed to eternal exile. His lantern, carved from a turnip, flickered with a coal stolen from hell. Some villagers swore they saw him on Samhain nights drifting between cottages, his hollow grin leading other spirits like moths to flame. To glimpse Jack was to know the fate worse than death. Neither heaven nor hell, but endless wandering with only a ghostly light. As the night deepened, the veil tore wider. Ghostly forms passed among the living, some welcomed with offerings, others feared. Mothers swore they saw children lost to fever standing by the fire, eyes wide, lips silent. Old men whispered they heard wives long dead calling their names on the wind. But alongside these tender returns came darker shapes, twisted figures with hollow eyes, hands reaching not for love but for warmth, for flesh. The villagers' disguises, masks of bone and skin were their only protection, hiding them among the crowd of the dead. And then the climax came. Sudden silence swept the fields, extinguishing even the insect's song. The fire flared unnaturally high, sparks rising like souls torn free. From the smoke emerged a towering figure cloaked in shadow, faceless but crowned with antlers. Some called it the spirit of the wild hunt, others the Lord of the Dead. Its presence pressed on every chest, stealing the breath of the living. Children fainted, elders collapsed in prayer, and the priests fell silent. 4 words held no power against what walked that night. In that stillness, hoofbeats thundered. Down the hill rode a headless figure on a black horse, cloak whipping like wings. The villagers screamed, for they knew the omen, the rider who hunted souls. Whether it was the Dullahan of Celtic lore, or the horseman of later tales mattered little. It was death itself, galloping through their world. Lanterns sputtered, cats hissed, children cried. The air reeked of smoke and fear. People fought back the only way they knew, banging pots, screaming prayers, casting offerings into the flames. Noise was their weapon, chaos their shield, and slowly, agonizingly, the rider vanished into mist. The antlered figure dissolved into smoke, and the night resumed its uneasy breath. But the veil remained thin, and every flicker of flame seemed to reveal another face watching from beyond. By dawn, when the fires died and new flames were carried back to each hearth, the village breathed again, yet no one celebrated. They had survived, but only barely, and they knew they would face it again. Halloween, Samhain, All Hallows, whatever name it bore, was not a night of games. It was a confrontation with the dead, with exile, with hunger, with the shadows that pressed against the fragile wall of life. The climax of that night was not the defeat of spirits, but the realization that they could never truly be banished. At best, they could be bargained with, disguised from, appeased. Halloween was not joy, it was survival. Halloween, stripped of costumes and candy, reveals itself not as a children's holiday, but as a survival ritual. A cultural technology designed to manage the one force that terrifies humanity most: death, like festivals of light or joy. Halloween emerged from a worldview that accepted the dead as present, active, and demanding. The disguises, the offerings, the fire, the noise, these were not playthings, but defenses. And through them we see archetypes that still haunt our imagination. The witch embodies forbidden knowledge. In Samhain's earliest rituals, druids and seers were mediators between the living and the spirit world. They knew which herbs to burn, which words to chant, which sacrifices to offer. When Christianity reframed this power, it demonized it. The wise woman became the witch, her knowledge labeled a pact with the devil. But the archetype persisted. The woman at the edge of the village, with knowledge of life and death, feared because she carried truths society wished to suppress. On Halloween, witches are not just caricatures. They are masks of our anxiety about power, uncontained. Wisdom that belongs to outsiders, and the terror that someone might speak to the dead when the rest of us cower. The black cat represents liminality. Neither fully of the human world nor entirely of the wild, cats move silently, their eyes reflecting unseen light. In Celtic lore, the cat was said to stalk solemn nights, stealing souls. Christianity cast black cats as demonic familiars, companions of witches. Yet even stripped of myth, their presence unsettles. A creature that watches judges, yet remains unknowable. On Halloween, the black cat archetype warns us that the boundary between realms is fragile, and guardians lurk at thresholds to remind us of what may cross. Ghosts are perhaps the most direct archetype of the holiday. They are the restless dead, those who should have passed on but did not. Halloween was always their night, the evening when homes laid food at the door and fires burned to guide them. But ghosts also embody guilt and memory. They are the people we failed to honor, the wrongs we never righted, the losses that ache still. To disguise oneself as a ghost was to hide among grief, to hope the spirits would pass by. Every mask of bone and sheet of white cloth is an admission. We are terrified not only of dying, but of the return of what we cannot bury. Stingy Jack, wandering with his lantern, is the archetype of exile. neither heaven nor hell would claim him. He is damned to wander between an outcast of both realms. The jack-o'-lantern is more than decoration. It is the light of exile, a grim reminder that choices echo beyond the grave. His glowing face, carved into pumpkins, still grins on porches. But behind every grin is a warning. There are fates worse than death, to be forgotten, to be denied place, to walk forever with only a flame for company. That is Jack's legacy. The Headless Horseman, galloping beneath moonlit branches, embodies pursuit. In Celtic myth, the Dullahan carried his own head, a herald of death. In American lore, Irving's horseman is a soldier denied rest, his violence echoing through time. Both reveal the same archetype, the revenant hunter. He is death not as natural end, but as relentless chase, pursuing the living until they collapse in fear. On Halloween, his legend whispers that death does not merely commit follows hunts and never loses its quarry. Together, these figures form a ritual lexicon of fear. Each archetype teaches a lesson. Witches warn of forbidden power, cats guard the threshold, ghosts demand remembrance. Jack embodies exile, and the horseman enforces inevitability. Halloween unites them into a night where fear is not banished, but managed. Masks and lanterns, offerings and noise all serve to channel terror into ritual, to give it shape so that it does not consume us. Philosophically, Halloween shows us that culture survives by transforming chaos into pattern. An eclipse becomes a story of wolves devouring the moon. The restless dead become guests at the table. Fear becomes disguise and play. But beneath these transformations, the primal dread remains. The holiday is a rehearsal of death, an annual negotiation with the unknown. It asks us to laugh at what terrifies us, but also to remember why it terrifies us in the first place. Modern society paints over these truths with costumes and candy, but the bones are still there. Children dressing as witches and ghosts unknowingly echo disguises meant to trick the dead. Pumpkins carved with grins are echoes of turnips lit to ward off spirits. Trick-or-treating is the faint descendant of offerings left at doors. We laugh now where our ancestors trembled, but the ritual persists because the fear has not vanished. We still live in a world where death is inevitable, where memory haunts, where the unknown presses at the edges. Thus, the interpretation of Halloween is not a festival of fun, but a mask of dread. It is survival transfigured into play. It is grief dressed in bright colors. It is death disguised as candy. But if you listen closely, beneath the laughter of children and the glow of porch lights, you can still hear the ancient question: who knocks at the door tonight? A neighbor or a shadow returned. Tonight, Halloween glows with laughter and light. Children parade in masks, pumpkins grin from doorsteps, candy piles into eager hands, yet beneath the costumes and the sugar lies an older silence, a memory that will not fade. For on this night, the Celts once stood around dying fires, their faces painted with ash, their hearts trembling as shadows moved between worlds. The black cats still watch from fences, lanterns still burn to keep something away, or perhaps to guide it back. We have painted fear in bright colors, but the bones of the ritual remain. Every mask is a disguise. Every lantern is a ward. Every knock at the door is an echo of the question our ancestors asked in whispers: is it the living or the dead who come tonight? So the question lingers, pressing at the edges of the firelight. When we celebrate Halloween, are we protecting ourselves from the shadows or inviting them to walk among us once more? Thank you for walking with us into the shadowed roots of Halloween, where witches, black cats, ghosts, and cursed lanterns still whisper of nights when death walked beside the living. Do you believe this holiday has truly become harmless festivity, or does every mask and glowing pumpkin still echo a ritual of fear? Share your thoughts below. Like this video, subscribe to Dark Mythology, and return as we summon more forbidden myths where even celebration hides the oldest shadows.